Today is the budget town hall and workshop. FSR will be presenting the third draft of the 2025 annual budget. Our two finance committees, the FAC and the PAC, will have input and comment on the proposed budget. This is not the final budget. This will help us to develop that. Today, the only comments will be coming from the two finance committees and from the board itself. The real challenge here is that we need to continue to maintain and enhance the amenities of our community while keeping the HOA dues at an acceptable and affordable level. So trying to balance the two is where we're at every year, and this year is no different. With all the increases in wages and cost of goods. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to First Service at this time. Yes, please turn your cell phones to silence. Thank you. Okay. First Service.
You can turn off your mic, Bob. It's still okay. Welcome, everyone. So what we're going to do is a PowerPoint presentation under a summary of each department. As I'm going through those departments, I'll have the individual come up here for their respective department, and we will then have a discussion, and any questions related to that department can be asked at that time. So with the first one that we're going to start with is Eric, if you can come up, we're going to start with food and beverage. So as you'll see on the summary right now, you can come up right here. The subsidy is expected to be $638,900. That's in the budget, versus the subsidy of 2014 of $413,101. About a 54% increase, a $226,000 rough change year over year. So what changed within that department? The revenue projections for food were reduced to achievable levels. And liquor and beer revenue is expected to increase as a result of the lounge expansion, so those line items were increased. Labor costs increased in the restaurant and lounge due to additional working hours and an increase in the cost of labor and the related benefits. And then finally, there was a change with cost of goods, was increased to a higher percentage to absorb input cost increase. The board is currently reviewing the food and beverage business plan, and approval is needed before that implementation. So with that, I have Eric here. If there's any questions regarding food and beverage you'd like to ask, he and I can answer those questions for you. PAC? If you use the microphone, please.
This is Sandra Gutnick with the Finance Advisory Committee.
There you go. Right there.
Okay, is this good? Okay, thank you. So sorry, haven't done this before. Eric, I had a question about the cost of food for the restaurant. It's been budgeted at 30% of sales for several years, but consistently achieves 50%. Of the cost of sales, and I'm wondering what would be different in 2025.
Good, use the mic. Use mic.
There, can you guys hear me? Well, just most recently,
That's me.
There, can everybody hear me? I can hear myself now, great. Well, just most recently we had inventory completed, which Josh just finished up this weekend. And as he essentially was going through it and watching him do it, there were a lot of discrepancies based on the previous Excel spreadsheet, which was completely inaccurate and not maintained by the previous executive chef. So not to put blame on anybody, however, he did his due diligence and he went through it, and I believe it resulted in an inventory number which was more accurate, correct? Just under like 38,000 of the sort. So pretty much, with considering that's where we're closer at, it's not exactly perfect. There's still some things that need to be worked out. On that end, he just put in the rough numbers per se, since we're on a deadline to get it into to Blanca. Doing with base, how can I answer this? Overall, with his help and his expertise and his ultimately, the executive chef, maintaining that overall and working on all that, we will see that get close down to 30%, if not lower, and also as well with the increases of bringing up our pricing to current, to basically to where they should be at overall, because we're still behind per se, updating the menus, the menu pricing, say just for the sand wedge, and we just recently got alcohol done for the most part. Mind you, we are still trying to run specials as well to cater to those that should attract people in, as Tom Hyatt had recommended. So with that being said, it's putting the right people in the right spot, doing their job, ultimately. And that hasn't been really happening prior to what I saw in the beginning when I first started here. So now that we have him and myself and getting the right tools in place, we will get closer to that number, if not match it, hopefully beat it, so we can at least break even or hopefully make a profit on that aspect.
So one of the things also in the business plan that we talked about is the better training with the back of the house staff. A portion should be the same portion if it's Carlos versus if it's another one of the cooks back there. Portion control is going to be key to maintaining this budget. That has been a problem, and not only with the back of the house. When I reference back of the house, that is your cooks, that's your dishwashers, but also the front of the house needs to be aware of that as well, because your servers, for example, will but will prepare your salads. Did they give you 5 dressings, or did they give you what is in the menu of 2 dressings? Simple things like that needs to be trained, that training protocol needs to be done. Observation by the executive chef. An executive chef just isn't always, I know there's sometimes a vision that executive chef is back there cooking, and the executive chef has 2 roles. Number 1 is to the administrative function, pricing, making sure we accurately have the right recipe, right pricing for that recipe, and then it's training and observation. And that's what a true executive chef needs to do, and that is encompassed in this, trying to get to that 34. Now it's raised to 34 because, agreed, there has been some difficulties in the past achieving that 30%. So that one area, and from the basics, we've talked with Josh, is you take a picture of what the ideal plate will be. Then you train each of them on the recipe so that the recipe that each cook does is the same. If you can control that. And then the last thing that's in the business plan is talking about a return to the just-in-time inventory. The pandemic kind of screwed things over in the past, where restaurants may order a lot because they were afraid that there would be a shortage of that product. Now that has pretty much worked its way out, and a way that, as Eric said, getting the inventory down to about 38,000. 35 is the ideal sweet spot. That avoids waste, spoilage, because I've ordered just the right amount in the right amount of time with the lead time to get that in. And also it will be working on the banquet menu to ensure items are, this was a change, that there'll be a deposit for that food, because what has happened in the past is clubs have come in, have said, I want this type of food, and then there's been a plan change, or that event has been canceled. Well, the food was ordered and now is stuck in the inventory, and that has to be blown out through specials. So you might remember we had a shrimp bonanza a couple of months ago. That was a direct result of a large amount being ordered and that event not occurring. So it's controlling your inventory, it's controlling your portions, it's making sure the pricing is updated, and you have to be proactive in that. So those are all things that are involved with that process.
Can I ask a follow-on question?
Sure.
I'm so sorry. And I'm sorry, I feel like I can't look at you when I'm close to the microphone. And maybe the PAC is aware of this as well, but to what extent is the food cost a result of, or are we actively involved in these GPOs, group purchasing organizations, where for food we're able to leverage volume for price, or if we're kind of standalone at Sun Lakes, perhaps we don't have the volume to participate? I don't know. I know they exist. I don't know enough about how you join one of these or what the criteria is, but I'm wondering if, these large hotels, large organizations have these GPOs, and is that something we could do or leverage, or how does that factor in?
So right now we're standalone. We're not the size of a Hyatt Marriott that has the ability to negotiate very effectively for their in hotel bars and restaurants. That is something that's been researched in the past. We talked about that, but we're considered a small fry in this bigger world. So unless and I know that is one of the objectives that Bob has worked with, trying to do the meeting with other HOAs and having those joint meetings to try to see if there can be any synergies there with products on the golf course or products in the restaurant. But right now, we're not at that point. We're still a small fry. Pardon the pun, but
If I may.
please.
So also in regard to that, what we do, and what I know, get it on the mic for sure. What we're trying to do basically, and what I've seen Josh do as well when he is ordering, if he sees a price discrepancy, like if he goes to get something, say at Smart and Final, let's give an example. Recently he had to get some cream cheese frosting. He saw a difference in $1 per pound, so he called Cisco and renegotiated the price for that. So when he sees that kind of aspect, we try to leverage that to lower the prices overall. Yeah, and we can. Yeah, and that's the point. You got to be on top of it ultimately overall, and he essentially is. So.
Any other questions for Eric? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to the next.
I have
I'm sorry.
a quick question that I think is in the back of mind of a lot of people, and that is, there's been talk about a potential food and beverage minimum. Just to get it out on the table, I would assume that that's probably not part of your current budget, that the impact to staff, and assuming a significant increase might come from a minimum. I assume that's not part of this.
You are correct. That is not part of it. And there would be some cost increases as well to offset those revenues that could be generated. So the minimum is not included in this.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions before we move on to the next? Oh, Ron.
Okay, I know in the past we've tried to budget by assuming revenues, and variations in revenues have a big impact on the amount of the loss. So if you look at this year, I'm pleased to see that we're being more realistic on revenues. However, an increase in revenues will increase the losses. So even if we hit the 30% and the 99%, it's going to cost us almost $1.30 to put a dollar's worth of food on the table. And I know we've talked about this a lot on how we manage that. We probably should have some kind of a flex budget, but good old Davis Sterling says we have to have an absolute. So my question is, what do you have sufficient tools processes, procedures to be able to adequately analyze the variances? And secondly, what actions need to be taken when we have variances?
So when you ask about tools, that's a good question. I know that is a topic with the POS system that has been a topic since 2020. Currently, we have to data mine, pull data from salaries, purchases, event sales, and roll those all into a prime cost report. That takes man hours. It's not something that simply like modern systems have, where you press a button and that information is then brought forward to you to review. That is a topic that the board is looking at, is the point of sale system. We've also talked about a point of sale system that is more robust, that can include inventory management, if it can interface with third parties like US Foods and Cisco, making it a lot easier to interface instead of manually doing an Excel spreadsheet. Now, Josh and Eric have migrated to utilizing, I believe you're using US Foods for your pricing and your inventory spreadsheets, but again, that is problematic if it's a US Food, but we're ordering from Crown Meat and other places. So the tools right now, a lot of Excel spreadsheets, it could be automated better, and I think we need to look, or the recommendation I had in 2020 that I continue is not only as a POS system, but the ancillary pieces that go with it. Room reservations, then you incorporate what Rec is doing in with this package. Makes it a lot easier for them. If we're going to charge for rooms, a lot easier for them to charge for their room reservations. Inventory management, the pricing of it, those are the tools that we're lacking that we have to do on an Excel spreadsheet. One of the things that, again, the process is how we do the count, our target goals for getting the inventory to a level we feel is just in time. If you have variances, going back to find out what happened, what was the estimate, and I think you said it in the revenue side, Ron, is that we've taken a look at the revenues and dialed those back. In years past, those were aggressive and unachievable. And so bringing those back into line and also being realistic with the costs of food and the labor. And what Eric is doing is going back, working with Chef Josh, and then find out, did we price this out right for events going forward? Are we pricing those correctly? That is a process that has changed as well. Instead of we'll make it up on volume. That doesn't work here. That does not work here. And that type of thought needs to go out the door and be realistic to say, no, this is the cost I need to get per person. And that has affected. That's been some ripple effects with some of the clubs and groups, and I understand that the change of price year over year is concerning to those clubs who don't have a lot of funds. But on the other side, and I know it's an amenity, but this is the constant push-pull struggle we have, is it an amenity or is it a profit-generating center? And I would always, as an HOA, say it is an amenity that is just for the members. So there have been some changes, but I think, Ron, the biggest point, because I'm going to go over my time and then Bob's going to look at me, is I think the POS system that was talked about with the TAI, with the Procurement Advisory Committee, of looking at a robust system that can handle all our needs. That is a priority.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a follow-up on that, has any work been done in coming up with a completely manual, I'll say paper system, as a stopgap measure over the next 60, 90 days, where we can track a P&L day-to-day simply by having staff members in a real-time mode, not after you have the data in the computer, but as you're going through this? I mean, we all have to be reminded that it's only been in recent decades that restaurants have had the benefit of POS systems. They, in fact, had to do this manually for the entire history of restaurant business, as far as I know. Has any work been done trying to come up with a prototype for that?
So there is a manual process that I'm working with Eric on There's a 24-hour lag on it for payroll. Part of the problem is payroll is not input through the point of sale system. First Service uses an ADP system, which is separate, and for their corporate needs, we have to wait 24-hour period to get all the hours that were actually worked. Now, Eric has begun working on budgeting, look at what I'm scheduling on a Excel spreadsheet, which is the old way of doing it. You'd look to say, I know this person's gonna work 8 hours, 6 hours, plug that in what their rate is, and I can pretty much look at, here are my expenses. If my food costs are 35, my revenue is this should be the bottom line. And so we are getting back to that actually, Bob. And we've recently done a spreadsheet to make it easier for Eric to get the information from payroll for the hours worked. He then plugs that in, has the sales data for the prior day, and then can see roughly how did that day do. And we're also, that's a continuation of what Jason started with the programs or events that we had started looking at. Is an event profitable or not? Do a P&L for each of the events. Something we started with recreation that we're now going to have Eric start doing with his team.
To comment on Sandra's point on cost of food, also I have a question on the cost of food. Usually I'm yelling in this thing. Relative to cost of food, you know, if we look at actual 2022 of 51% cost of food, 2023, 55% cost of food, in 12 months ending the end of August, we're still running 53% of sales. And you have a budget of 35%. And if we just look at the dollars, the 12 months ending 2024 is 587, let's say $590,000 cost of food. You're projecting $390,000 cost of food for 2025. That's a $200,000 improvement. And how are we going to ensure that we have systems in place, purchasing procedure, receiving procedure, and just basic skills? If we don't have a POS system, how are we going to make those improvements, Eric?
Without a POS system?
You don't have one now.
Right. Well, the one we have is like a dinosaur, so it's old. It's not really user-friendly per se. I mean, our iPhone could probably do a better job if we can build a little system for it. That being said, with cost of food overall is doing it the right way, as per se, as Josh has been doing currently, bringing up the prices up to date. I mean, making sure that on the inventory spreadsheets, prices are accurate and the count is accurate. Then it comes down to portion control, and that's where my scope really comes into play, especially from the healthcare side. We based everything on a PPD, on a census within whatever hospital I was in at the time. So, and we did it by portion control and caloric intake, but it also came down to how much money we spent on that patient per person per day overall, not per meal. So with that being said, you have to focus on portion control, making sure it's consistent all the way around. Just within those two aspects, being in the right, doing it correctly per se, ordering, inventory, or those three I should say, ordering, inventory, and also portion control, that's half the battle. Then you have to jump into pretty much the labor aspect, which is, it's all intertwined of course, but that's the goal. Now with a true POS system, of course, I'm with everybody per se, or with you specifically, that we do need a better POS system that could do it on a real-time basis, where we can see labor cost to what's coming in on a minute-by-minute basis. You can do that with the newer stuff, and also see real-time data. So we have to put, like I said, we have to put the right tools in the right place overall. And we're still kind of missing a couple tools.
So with your comments of doing things right, should we expect a 30% cost of food in September and October?
No. How would we change that right away without the right tools in place? We still don't.
The right tools include a POS system?
I think it does. Yeah.
So we don't have a POS system that works, so we have a $200,000 swing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but if we follow the pattern of being $200,000 difference in cost, does that not create a negative variance on the bottom line and affect operating cash?
Well, I think you're going back to the projections of that difference is an increase in sales over the annualized to what the budget is for food. And as we've laid down, and as Mr. Hicks has said, there's still a manual system that can be done, even though I don't have all the bells and whistles. It just has to be managed properly and proactively. That means that you may not see Eric out on the floor picking up plates and saying hi because he's in the back trying to crunch the numbers with Josh. There is a balance, and that we've seen that, and I will give you evidence that we've seen that different styles between different food and beverage director. You're out in the front more, means you're not out in the back doing the homework. You're in the back, I understand you're not out in the front then to see how the customer service process is going. That's where, again, a structural change is in place right now that the MODs need to play a better part in the front to handle those managerial items. But again, if you manage it better, even with a POS system, without a new POS system, there's still the old-fashioned way of writing it out, costing it correctly. When you do banquets, make sure you cost it correctly. And if you go through that process, you can achieve that 34.9% without a POS system, because we're not going to get a POS system tomorrow. I don't think that would not do the association well without doing a full due diligence test of all the systems like management had done back in 2020, which was a 4-month process of just getting those items. So I would counter that. I think that these items can be achieved if they're properly managed. That is the issue here.
So was that due diligence of POS systems not discussed as a board job product this month?
It was discussed, but there has been further discussion that is needed. I believe that's on the next agenda for discussion and an overall plan that's approved by the whole board.
Thank you.
Hello,
Eric.
Can I
have the floor?
Can you talk a little bit about how you see the food, the beverage or the lounge with this remodel and this opening? Just what do you see as what's going to be different with respect to the new lounge, the opening? How are you viewing that in terms of the effect on the budget?
I think it's going to be pretty nice, considering that somebody purchased restoration hardware, which is pretty cool. So I think it's going to be a lot of maintenance nevertheless. But on that aspect, with the lounge, I never saw the previous lounge, to be quite honest. I don't know what to really compare it to. However, from what I see and the talk about it and everybody's input, I'm hoping that business will pick up. That we'll have people staying later, and like right now, on a Friday night, the Sandwich shuts down. When I talked to the board about this, and nobody would come in between practically 9:15 to 11. So we adjusted the hours one more time, but simply had a bartender in there for an hour and a half, literally just detailing stuff. Just a waste of labor hours overall. Everybody was out on the veranda listening to music. So hopefully with the lounge, it'll draw more people in per se to where we have a larger crowd. So increase sales, increase traffic ultimately. And that ultimately will help reduce our overhead as we bring in more revenue overall. So I'm hoping, just as the way it's going to look, I believe, that's going to be really appealing and bring you guys out and attract more resident members here than we're seeing right now currently. So I think don't quote me on this, but we're maybe getting in a fifth of the total residents to come and visit per se. Not even that, right?
12 to 15%.
About 12 to 15%. let's say on the 15% side, there's a market for 85% of, there's, how can I say this? Bear with me, I hate talking in public. So, there's 85% more people out there that we can attract in, which we need to market to overall.
I guess that begs the question, we're opening in about a month, what is the plan for the opening? Because I think you get one opportunity to impress these people, and the 85%, like you say, that are not going to the lounge right now. Is there a plan to bring these people in?
So under the proposed business plan that was developed that is on the board's table talks about the partnering with the marketing committee on several options for marketing. And again, that is on the board's plate to review and approve, then move forward with that.
Thank you.
Jess, did you have a question?
Actually, I've heard so much about the benefits of having a POS system, and I think I've given you my study and evaluation of the budget last month, and I made some recommendations there, and I'm quite impressed that we're discussing the benefits of having a POS system which we could integrate to the accounting and reporting system. And I don't understand why we can't make a decision on having a POS system, because it would provide us with accountability. You tell us that this is what you can do, but with those systems, we'll be able to know how far you are from your objective. And unfortunately, I've been listening here. You've had this idea of having a POS system since 2020, and now it's 2024. When are we going to have a POS system so we can at least know why we have to subsidize, why the subsidy is continually increasing, and now it's $638,000. Why can't we have new ideas? Why can't, I realize that the master board is the policy maker and FSR is the management company. Maybe the master board should work together and have this POS system integrating with the accounting and reporting system so we can identify, who's responsible. Is it FSR or is it the master board? I spent a lot of hours and I provided the members of the master board with my analysis, And as far as the recommendations are concerned on how to improve the sales, the revenues, I got it from many people who are very knowledgeable in golf, as well in the restaurant business. And why don't we have an open mind? Thank you.
To your point, Jess, as Chris mentioned, a POS system is coming up for discussion again. A board job product was discussed and presented at the last executive meeting with a resident present. I believe there was a general consensus of going forward with the written plan and the project. Since that time, it's come under some additional questions, and it is on the agenda for the next upcoming executive meeting. The plan was to benchmark the Toast POS system. We presently have a proposal, and they're willing to put on a demonstration next week or this week, if the board wants. Thank you.
One of the last things I just want to, is there any more questions for Eric before we transition?
Chris, if I can just make one comment, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
There seems to be a little misunderstanding here. We do have a POS system. It's just not very good.
That's true.
That's the challenge that we've run into. So we have the POS system. Several years ago, one of the boards, when we first started looking at upgrading the POS system, that board decided just to upgrade the current system because it's expensive to buy a POS system. So they chose to upgrade the current system. Unfortunately, the current system can't be upgraded to do the things that the new POS systems that we're looking at can do. So we do have a POS system. It's just not doing what we'd like it to do, which is why we have to do so much of this stuff that's manual. So I just wanted to make that clear. There is a POS system.
Yes, I understand. But you know what? If we're subsidizing $638,000 and it's increasing every year, I think we can easily afford
And
a
we agree with you,
POS
Jess.
system.
We agree with you. It's just that we can't undo what's already been done. We can only move forward with new ideas as you're asking for. And that's what this board is doing.
Okay, thank you.
One of the last things anything more for Eric as we transition to Mark Birchfield? Okay, one of the last things, oh, yes, ma'am.
One last question. I'm not sure it's for Eric, maybe it's for Chris. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Chris, was just about the projections of revenue for both the restaurant and the lounge. I guess some of us were thinking on the fact, I think, that the restaurant revenue then could be taken back at least to 2023 actuals, along with probably some price increases, since this would be then 2 years later, and that there were some projections of increased volume in the lounge over 2023. I had heard at least 15%, an expectation of at least 15% growth in the lounge once it had opened over 2023. But in the revision 3, it's not quite reflected that way. So I just wondered if you could clarify that the assumptions just from comparison to prior years for that growth. Thank you.
Well, what we're seeing is we will see some growth in the liquor. We want to take a conservative approach, as the PAC has said. And Ron specifically has been here many years on the FAC, has seen that we have projected too much, too aggressive. So we did take into account liquor and beer increasing. Wine, we did not go up as much, as we've seen more members choose to bring their own wine, and you see a corkage fee. Now, Eric is looking at options of bringing in different wines. I know Angel is working with him on that, of what other items we can carry that members would choose to drink here instead of bringing their own bottle. But since I do have that ability for people to bring in their own wine, we did not go up as much. With dinner items, we've just seen a decline overall in what people desire. So even in 2023, it being higher, annualized to this year, it's low. And so we're found a middle point for dinner. Lunch, we still feel that we'll be able to increase over the 2023 actuals. We're working with David in golf to do maybe smaller tournaments. Eric and David working together, so that would increase the amount of banquets, lunch. And breakfast is still going to be low because we're only going to open Saturday and Sunday. We can't compete with the Denny's, the IHOPs. When you go to an IHOP, you have they're able to buy their product at a low cost, low margin breakfast. We're not going to compete with that. And so I think that revenue is in line with what we will actually get. So I think we've taken a conservative approach. And as we open up the lounge, we will see some increase, but we will also see one last thing is that what's happening in the sandwich will migrate over to the lounge. And so you might think, well, that's going to be a 15% because both are active, and that's not the case. Both will be open for lunch, but the dinner and the push toward dinner in the restaurant and the lounge we'll probably just move those sales from the sandwich over to the lounge. And lastly, one last thing I want to say, the paper myth, because that stuck with me, Bob. And one might say, well, how can you prove to me that the manual paper method works? Well, if you look at the lounge cost of goods, and that's been on average 22%, they follow a recipe, they follow the jigger, which was the 2-ounce pour. Those have been consistent. And what that demonstrates to me is that if it's properly managed, like the bar has been done in the past, if you can put that over to the restaurant, you can achieve those percentages with a paper system. And the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, of you look at the lounge has done that. Their cost of goods for their beer, wine, and everything have been in that same range for the last 4 years. So I think it can be done with the paper system. It just has to be managed. And you can get a new system, fancy buttons, like a Ferrari, but if it's not managed well, that Ferrari is going to break down, so will the POS, the old adage of garbage in, garbage out. So with that, we need to move on because, Bob, that's 45 minutes.
Hold on.
Okay.
You know, I still have another question because I'd like to Eric to address the labor. You know, what systems? And I'm sorry we're hung up here on food and beverage, but even at 638,000, I'm still uncomfortable whether we can achieve that result. And I want to have a better understanding of what, the other area that's been obviously troubling is the labor costs. And what tools or systems are you going to use to be more effective bringing labor cost in on budget? And I'd just like you to talk a little bit about that.
Take this one.
No, we got it. So,
Thanks.
paper method.
Well, acutely, per se, is training the MODs and myself, making sure that people are taking their breaks and doing accordingly with all the labor laws and whatnot. You have to do before the 5th hour. They can go over the 5th hour to the 6th hour. I don't want to get into the details, but small little mistakes that the servers or the bartenders or the front of the house staff or back of the house staff as well can just add essentially a meal premium hour per se, which would cost a real time about it's about over $20 extra per that person. And quantify that with 35, 40 employees daily it adds up. So pretty much keeping an eye on labor on a daily basis, which actually I was just doing today because it's labor's payrolls approvals to do today and whatnot, but also training the front of the house staff, the MOD specifically, to break accordingly, making sure that people are taking their breaks, cutting accordingly, and also running a thinner crew in the front, as we actually have seen. I've actually seen a lot more complaints overall with people complaining about not being able to be greeted on time properly, etc. But because we got the drop amount of labor that we have on the front of the house to meet the numbers. So
You do that in your schedule, right?
yeah, exactly. We review the schedule and then also we adjust accordingly. And then also we have, which throws a wrench, which is a variable, our call off sometimes, which helps, but also then reduces the quality of service that you guys get on the front. Yeah, and overtime as well. So it's a working algorithm per se that you have to be on top of roughly 16 hours a day that I'm training my front of the house staff to manage, and also to be more efficient. So, mind you, it all intertwines per se. Yes, if we had a better POS system, we could be more efficient per se to run in the numbers and hit a button just like BJ's Brewhouse, and say, oh shoot, my labor to cost ratio is way high, I gotta start cutting because we don't have enough people in, which would be helpful for sure. However, just as the paper method is, just having an eye as to say, okay, well, I don't have that many people in, it's dying off early, I'm gonna start cutting these servers and make sure they're off in a half an hour, or cutting a cook, or doing as such so far, but also as on the back end of reviewing in the morning the day prior to adjust accordingly as you can move forward. So it's a work in progress per se, and we're working on it. We're putting the right people in place, as I'm saying, and trying to stay on top of it, and also implement the training, and also putting the right people in those positions. Mind you, we've had a lot of setbacks as well ever since I've got here. We lost and turnover as well, specifically with, as you saw, that we brought a new chef in. And so it's setting the right foundation so we can be more effective by meeting these numbers on the budget accordingly. And you can't just do that instantly as September, October, unless you guys just threw everything in there and have the right staff and are ready to go, but because we're not there. But this is a marathon, not a quick race, and you have to put the right parts, ultimately.
If I may
Eric,
interject, I think that until we improve the product, we need to be a little bit more nimble on the scheduling, because I've been there where there's more staff than there are customers. So when that happens on a consistent basis, we need to adjust accordingly, and hopefully that will happen in the future.
Eric, we're projecting about $100,000 a month in sales in the restaurant, if I understand correctly. And our calculation in our budget is 100%, labor cost is going to be 100% of sales. So we're anticipating a budget with 100% labor cost. If you divide that by 4 weeks, that's $25,000 of fully burdened labor per week. Do we presently have a system that tells us that we're budgeting $25,000 of labor per week in the restaurant?
Just basically the spreadsheet that we're using overall, and it's
Does it add up labor hours and labor cost?
yes. But as Mitchell had mentioned prior, that we have to compare it for the day prior. It shows for the day prior, so we are essentially behind in a way 24 hours, but also keeps us on tap to adjust accordingly.
And the schedule.
So not to beat you up, it's not you need the tools to do your job, and you've referenced that's a POS system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall.
So we have done work on a POS system. It was introduced at the last meeting. Toast is a system that's utilized in many, many restaurants. Actually, it'll show you your schedule. It'll allow you to schedule by employee, by hours. It shows the anticipated sales. It also shows the anticipated labor cost and a percentage of that. That could be done automatically if we had a system like Toast. Whether Toast is the right one or the wrong one, it's one that's available. They are willing to do a demonstration with 3 days' notice to show us what it'll do. Will it really do what we say? And I would suggest that we as a board approve that and get that going. I've also received a proposal for the cost of equipment and installation for that system if we chose to go that way. And there's a lot of things to consider whether we do or don't. But the information is there, and to Jesse's point, we've been talking about this for year after year, and it's time to pull the trigger and get it done.
May I speak?
Yes, sir.
Obviously, most people know that I've got about 20 years' experience in operations of restaurant and bars. And when you talk about POS systems are great at tracking, but that's not what we sell. What we sell is operations, service, and atmosphere. We are creating the atmosphere. FSR is working very hard to try to get the sandwich more like a sports bar and so on and so on. But I also talk to customers and servers quite often. And the more I see in the background, in my background, I've seen people when they're starting to have trouble and they're starting to have high payroll costs and this and that and the other, they start cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting. And what happens is your service is the wind up suffering. We have a service problem. One night, if we have a good group in here, MLC or Delaney and James, you got 25 tables in here. Each one of those tables has 6 to 8 people in it. If you were running a restaurant, you would not have more than one server having 32 people to serve, to give proper service. And because we have like 2 servers in a room with 200 people, we were leaving thousands and thousands of dollars on the table because they can't get served. So I understand the payroll cost is high. I don't know how much is being coded to it from admin or this and that and the other, but I know that we need twice the staff that we have. And our staff right now, we're losing our best people because we're not giving them hours. They're not getting the hours to where they can feel like they're making a living, and we're losing very good people. And we got to stop doing that. We got to give service. Service is omnipotent. If they get bad service and they walk out, guess where they're going to be walking their dog to tomorrow and talking to everybody up and down their street? Oh, I'll never go back there again. All you got to do is read Facebook a little bit and you'll see it constantly.
Okay, last call for restaurant, food and beverage.
Hey, Chris.
Okay,
Chris, we have a captive market here.
yes, we do.
We have, and as far as overhead is concerned, they don't have to pay rent, which other restaurants do. So it's just a question of marketing it. And how about this $25, what do you call that?
Food minimum?
Minimum, lose it, or, Yeah, I think, I like your idea, Bob. What's your idea, $30?
I think it was proposed to start with 25, and that's still being considered.
Yeah, and we can reduce that 638,000 subsidy. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to bring up Mark Birchfield. Thank you, Eric. Moving on to golf course maintenance. Come on down. Okay, so let me go over as Birch sits down. Golf course operations and maintenance year over year, increase about 56,231, about a 3.85%. Big items that have changed. Golf revenue is planned to increase with price increases for play. Increase in guest play has helped. I guess this is David too. We got to bring David. David, bring a chair. We don't want Birch to be up here alone. We don't want him on the firing line. Pro Shop continues to perform well. Labor costs are expected to have a small increase year over year related to 3% increase and benefit increase. Overall utilities are expected to increase from City of Banning, and we're trying to meet with them hopefully tomorrow. Usage will increase as we're seeing warmer periods, and Birch can even talk about that in a limited amount of time, Birch. But to talk about, we're seeing this year and last year unprecedented, I would say dryness, no humidity, and that requires additional watering. Birch can talk about that. And so in those budgets in version 3, you're seeing an increase in electricity and water, not only with the city rates, but also usage going up, because this is already October and we're still 93 degrees, dry 93 degrees. Birch has done a good job, and he's going to try to hold the line on the chemicals, pesticides. That is a complaint he gets about squirrels and gophers. Fertilizer is another area, and I know we like to think that just what happens here in Sun Lakes is controllable. If the Middle East continues to expand and oil is affected, oil affects a lot of the costs that go into our operations. Your fertilizers are one of them. Besides fuel, there's other things that get shocked, that shock cost, and so Birch is going to do his best to hold the line on the pesticides, herbicides, fertilizer. And looking ahead, weather continues to impact this budget. And we will see, if Mother Nature continues this path, seeing more water usage, not only in the gallons used, but in the price from the city of Banning. And staff will monitor the increase as we go forward to see where they can pull back, if they can or not. So with that, I just want to say welcome David he's walking into a budget that was actually created by Brian and myself for the operations and the Pro Shop products. So Brian can there I go. David can answer some things going forward, but some of the historical data, if there are questions on that, I will answer that on behalf of Brian. And with that, I will open it up for questions to these two fine gentlemen.
Okay, I'm out of here.
Okay, Birch, just talk about the water and the impacts that we're seeing, and what are the whispers? What's the grass telling you? I'm just kidding. But in the industry, I know there's a lot of impact there as well.
Well, over the past 3 years, we have been hit very hard with fuel charges, freight charges. The manufacturing process of most of the fertilizers that we buy are done with natural gas. Also, in the formulations of a lot of the fungicides that I use for the greens, primarily is where I spend my money. That's just like the pharmaceutical industry. In fact, Syngenta and BASF and a lot of these large pharmaceutical companies own the companies that I buy my chemicals from for the health of our greens and our plants. So everything has been going up. It's roughly about a 20% clip from 3 years ago. So I think I've held the line pretty well on it. A lot of this has been, like this year is a little bit more unusual than years before. And I do buy my chemicals and fertilizers at I'm buying them in October for the whole year, so I hold the price. So by the time I get around to September the next year, I'm not paying what I all year long for that high price. So it's a big advantage for us to do that. But more than anything, we have not been we raised the cost or the pricing on our fertilizers and chemistries, but it's running very rampant. This is a real big hit. I'm also noticing on the irrigation water. Normally, I would be in a position right now to save money. I do, it's almost every year, and it's basically the number that we're dealing with right now, this year, is because it can happen at any time. So instead of getting some of the savings that I've gotten in the past, this has been a very unusual year for heat and stress and irrigation needs. That also drives up the pumping power, the electricity for the pumps to run. And as most of us know, we've looked at irrigation system improvements, and our pump station runs at max capacity 10 or more hours a night. And it is not going to slow down until we start getting more rainfall. That's it. I mean, it's just more rainfall because we tried to reduce the water usage with drought-tolerant planting, and that's now gone away from it. It's not an option that I have, and that's unfortunate because we could have saved money indefinitely for the rest of the life of Sun Lakes, because City of Banning is going to be giving us some large increases, correct? And so with the electricity and the water, those are the energy processes that I worry about the most next year.
And how could they have saved? You said that they could have saved a lifetime. How could they have saved?
Indefinitely, the rates are what we're fighting. And if we don't lower the amount of usage, our rates are going to continue to climb because of the need. We're not reducing our need at all, not much. And when the weather and the environment gives us what we're dealing with right now, we should have been shutting back our water, and we're increasing it. We're at the max right now. We are watering at the highest level we will all year long. and it's a month longer than I thought or projected. Even though we've got the money there, we budgeted it, but I'm not going to get the savings I have in the past. Now, next year may be different. But my feeling is that for the rest of Sun Lake's existence, the drought-tolerant planting would have saved us money year over year over year until you guys shut this place down. And that was the one thing that I think that you got to realize is what's going to affect you now for indefinitely for the rest of the life. So it's a factor. We were in some sort of control of being able to lower that, but we walked away from it. Another thing in the budget right now, we've got a lot of zero increases of things that are obviously, like everything else in our society, is going up. Everyday goods. So, you know, it just, I'm gonna do more with less. It's my experience that I bring to do that, and I will do it to the very best of my ability. But when it comes to taking care of this property and the health, I'm going to do what's best for the golf course and for you, because if I neglect it, it's going to cost you double or 3 times to fix it. And I sure don't want that to happen. So,
Mark, thank you,
Yes.
first of all. I think you're doing a great job. But can you talk a little bit about, we got a lot of expenditures planned out of the reserve. And you've been through that. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the benefits we're going to get? Because I think we're talking about $1 million at least, right, in 2025?
yeah, you're talking about primarily anything that's in the reserves for equipment and other aspects. Let me
Right.
get my page here, and I do have some notes. Okay. First of all, I want to thank the board and the residents. We have gotten some equipment this year, and it has been outstanding. It is helping us staying, I'd say, more efficient and more effective. We haven't seen it all yet, because a lot of this stuff just barely has arrived. It's taken us over a year or two to get this equipment here at Sun Lakes. They've been on order that long. So I really appreciate it, and it is going to help us. So this year, on the equipment, we didn't buy everything that we wanted because we couldn't get it. And I appreciate the process that the Procurement Advisory Committee allowed me to do in order to get these things. And it's really helped me a lot as far as getting it. It's been very easy because we just fall right in line. I don't know where my page is.
That's okay. So you're about 419, about 420,000 roughly for equipment in 2025. Also on the plan, if you look at the irrigation, this is a topic that was brought up last year's budget about items moving to 2025, it's page 11 usually, page 11 or page 10.
I'm on 11 right now.
If we look at the irrigation controllers, let's see, pump station retrofit, as well as irrigation, that's about $2 million, a little over $2 million just for that item. And that is phase 1 of working on the irrigation in late 2025, early 2026. There will have to be, if the board greenlights the project, to move forward and basically obligates the funds, using a government term, to spend, then there will be a need to update the plans that were originally done with drought tolerant, move those to full wall-to-wall grass. It will be a full RFP that would have to go through the Procurement Advisory Committee. So we are targeting late 2025, I'm sorry, not late, but it's actually second quarter of 2025 for this, with shovels beginning in late 2025 and continuing into early 2026. So that's about the numbers, about $420,000 for equipment and a little over $2 million for irrigation-related items on the course.
Okay, Mark, can you talk about this irrigate, $2 million? I mean, why do we need to do this? Just in layman's terms, so I understand.
Sure. When I got here in 2012, I was asked to look at a potential irrigation system, remodel, redesign. The things that I've found, I put this model together back in 2013, 14, 15. We had all the plans done, all of it being with the drought tolerant areas included. So when we did all this, we went through all the phases of the landscape architect, the golf course irrigation architect, and all the mechanical planning that was needed. And it was all put on paper. We have those. We own them. The pump station was built in order to satisfy that amount of water with the drought tolerant areas. We did not finish about, I believe it's 40 acres. So the pump station is inadequate to keep going with grass all the way wall to wall, like that's what's happening now. And so we can retrofit the pump station. Pump station is the heartbeat of this place as far as getting water. And the current system we have is an excellent system, and we would upgrade from their, with them coming out and doing it for us. It would save us some money. But as this goes, everything's got to be reevaluated, redone, piped in, and so this irrigation system is expensive. $1 million isn't going to buy you anything. It's not going to buy you. It might buy some of the sprinkler heads. This is an expensive project. We could have done it for about $3 million in 2014. It's probably double that, if not more. So careful planning is done. It takes about a year to do the planning. And I know what I'm doing. I've done it. I've produced it all before. And we've got plans that we own. But most importantly is that our design that we've got main lines out there that whenever we lose pressure in the pump station, whether it's a power outage or something else, we lose pressure. What happens is that the pressure in the main lines retract, and the pipes that are supposed to be straight and level push up, and then these pipes lose their seal every 40 feet, and we get water bubbles that come up in the center of the fairways, and they look like blisters, and that is an indication that our main lines are susceptible to burst and break anytime. They're constantly under pressure. The valves that we have are all old. We've been replacing them, but they're old. And sometimes we can't isolate certain holes. If we have a break on number 1 fairway, well, we have to shut down, 2 and coming from 18. We have to isolate. We can't do that. I'd say 9 out of 10 of our main valves are iffy. We'll shut it down, but it won't stop it. They leak, and we continuously have to fight it, so we'll have to shut down 4 or 5 holes. And it's an inconvenience. It's also more risky, but those are things that's how we deal with it. The controllers that are in there, times are different now. The software that they're making now for control is now going back to the controllers because the computers are upgraded, the computers get upgraded, and if you've got a really nice fast computer and a slow satellite, the software, they're not really compatible. So they can be retrofitted. It's not hard. It just, and we can save money. I know how to do that. But the irrigation system is something that's going to change the way the property looks, especially from the walls going down where they're horrific, and around the trees, and then even in the center of fairways, because a sprinkler head spacing is 60 feet. 60. No, we're 60 to 75. And it doesn't make any sense why. But that's what I inherited. And that's the way sometimes, this was all done before GPSing, I believe, or just not very accurate, but everything would be GPSed and be exactly where they're supposed to be. Single head control, saving money on water, and more efficient for everything. Electricity, placement, aesthetics, it all goes hand in hand. But it is not an overnight deal. And
Thank you very much. The one thing I would like to point out is that, it's our job to maintain the amenities. And to me, one of the primary and most important amenity here are our golf courses. I mean, half of the homes are on a golf course. We're a golf course country club. And it's time that we invest the money in replacing the antiquated irrigation system. We need to bite the bullet and get it done. So I support his recommendations.
Thank you, Bob.
Can I interject something along on a different line? You guys are doing a great job. We have one of the nicest, pristine golf courses in this whole area.
Thank you.
So you guys doing a great job. Every once in a while, there's a big patch of where the skunks are tearing it up. But
yeah.
At some time in the past, I have heard the implication that a bond was purchased with Banning City in order to get the recycled water, or the chromium-6 wells. We have 7 wells in Banning, and 3 of them have too high a chromium-6. And so the bond was in order to pay for having some of the recycled water generated to Sun Lakes so that we could use non-potable water to water our golf course, which would dramatically lower the amount of cost. No, you don't think so?
No.
Well, that bond,
I really don't. They've said, a lot of people say that, it makes sense, but what the city will tell you is they've got to process this through the reclamation center and all this. They haven't even built it yet. And I've asked Perry Gertis of the water department, city of Banning, there's going to be no deals.
So if we have 7 wells in Banning, and we have 3 of them that are non-potable water that we can't use for drinking, etc., and we're building Atwell over here, and we're building a whole bunch over here, in the next 4 or 5 years, our water supply is going to be very, very expensive.
I agree.
Very expensive, because we're going to run out of water in 10 years in Banning, because they're building so many homes, and even Four Seasons is not completely built out yet.
Tom, one thing I'm aware of, Tom, this is Randy, and it's hard to figure out who's on the mic sometimes. Anyway, my brother-in-law happens to build waste treatment plants, and that's absolutely accurate. It costs them more per gallon than it is just pulling it from a well and treating it the normal treating. It's doesn't seem to make sense. I agree with everybody's thoughts, but that's, I know that for a fact.
I just wanted to finish up real quick with you on it. We used to have subsidies that would come to us to take turf out, up to $2 a square foot. This has been about 7 years ago. A lot of golf courses took advantage of this, and they took out turf. And it really helped them a lot. Some of them did it in the wrong way. And I believe that what I mean by that is they didn't really take out the turf. They bought new pump stations and did things to enhance their property, but not really to do what the bond or what it was for. And so the state got wind of it and kind of started calling it back and shutting it down. Banning never offered us any rebates, no program for drought tolerant planting, not a thing. You're not going to get any help from Banning. I'm serious. I know this.
They didn't, Metropolitan's program, they didn't participate.
Exactly. So what I wanted to know is water is the new gold, and it's also a precious commodity. And the only way you're going to achieve saving money on water is by using less water. So I also want you to know in this budget, I brought to the board a water process that we're going to, I believe the board's going to approve it, but it will save us upwards of 17% or more on water, the overall water that's processed through my pump stations. And it's really what it's going to do. It's not going to lower it. It's only going to help subsidize the fees and the rate and the increases that the city of Banning's putting on us over the next year. So, you know, I just wish that we would have stayed with the plan years ago and not gotten off of it. It would be done. You'd be saving money every time a sprinkler goes on. And we can't go there. But I am going to do my very best. If the irrigation system is agreed on and moved on, it'll be excellent. It won't be over the top. It'll be exactly what it should be, an efficient watering system that is solid for the next 25 years. And it'll get done correctly. I've done a lot of them. But that's where your money's at. We're spending over $1 million a year in water, and it's going to go up and up and up. My goal in this budget is to do this budget using all the tricks I know in my 30 years. And believe me, I've worked at some goat ranches. So I know how to finagle it. But the truth is, I can only do so much. So there's a lot of zero levels here. Those are the ones I'm focusing on. And I will make this golf course as beautiful as I possibly can in the meantime. That's it.
Okay, I'm going to remember my microphone. I want to say the golf course is beautiful. I'm not a golfer, nor do I live on it, but I drive around, and I'm appreciating, excuse me, I've been a little bit sick, appreciating what you're saying and the work you're doing. Really, I just want to offer, having looked at the budget, one challenge. It's more a calculation than a methodology. And this is in regards to water, the hot topic, and I'm in no way suggesting you should let the lawn go brown, so please don't hear that. But just in looking at the actual water spend for the last 12 months, and August, it would include June, July, and August, which were very hot. And also December, January, February, where we really didn't get our rain until until March, did the rains really start. And it's just under $1 million, $970,000. So the proposed budget is a 26% increase on top of that. And we had a sense in the FAC that perhaps it could be closer to a 15% increase. So we could be at 1.1 million, 1,120,000 approximately, rather than 1.2 million. And so my ask to you, with all due respect, is just to take a look at actual spend. You probably have the September bill by now, what we've done over the last 12 months, and is there an opportunity just in what we're projecting? Again, not saying need to let the lawn go brown. Please don't hear that.
Okay.
And then the only other question was in the pro shop about the additional staff person, which I was thinking we could keep going as we were, but I think that's not on the table.
Right, there's no additional staff. It's still the 8 staff members, 5 full-time, 3 part-time. and David has a fully staffed pro shop group. So
Yeah, my biggest concern with irrigation are the increases from the city. I monitor daily before we set a run time and a cycle time. We don't, I don't completely depend on a weather station, so to speak. It is a tool, but I don't depend on it. I'm watering at a deficit all the time here. So in other words, if my computer tells me that I need to put out 2/2 of an inch tonight, which is what happens, I'm watering at 1.8, 1.7, because I know that our soils are so bad, it runs off, it can't absorb all that. And so we come out in the morning and we put supplemental water out. And we've really tried to limit that recently. I'm hoping with the water sol that we're going to go into next year, will be much more friendly for our soils and have the nutrient load that's in the soils and the water be more penetrating and moving down through into the bottom portions. Like, we don't get past 1 inch of depth of water out here unless it's on the greens. So hopefully this water cell will give us about 4 inches, which will help us conserve more down the road. That's all part of the savings. But yeah, right now I do everything by environment and by monitoring, physical monitoring, and I'm doing the best I can with it. Mother Nature rules me. She totally does. She totally does. And we did cut back water 2 months ago, and I can see some areas that show it. But the most part, we keep the center lines going the best we can. So everything's being done to save water. To me, I'm doing it.
I'm usually the talker, and I was like sitting here going, when am I going to talk? When am I going to talk? No. So I am the revenue source, I guess, the golf operations. So I am looking at a lot of different ways to bring in revenue and from our membership. And going to one of your questions about the labor, when I do see that we have 3 people in the pro shop just standing around, well, I'm going to have them either do something, either go outside and either set up a clinic, do something with our membership, or get just like Eric said, we only have 15% that actually use food and beverage. We have less than that use the golf course or use both golf courses. So I've been here a little over a month, and after 10 o'clock, the golf course is dead on both golf courses. And we have 2 beautiful golf courses. So I'm working with our management, with food and beverage, with Mark Birchfield, about how we can utilize it and how we can maximize utilization the most. Because if we can get people on the golf course, what are they going to do afterward? Go to food and beverage and use food and beverage. So we're trying our best with that right now. We just started Get Golf Ready, which is for new golfers. We had 9 that started out, and I think 3 of them never played golf in their life. So they're starting to get on the golf course. Once we get them on the golf course, now they become annual members, right? So that's one thing that we're starting up. We're also starting up videos, which you're going to get your first video. Actually, you did last Friday. Every Friday you should get a new video from me or my staff. This is for all the or actually everybody in Sun Lakes. So you're going to meet the golf staff, you're going to see who we are, and then hopefully, I'm moving out here on the 21st, I will be going to food and beverage events, and I will be introducing myself to the rest of the membership, because a lot of the membership that comes to dinner never play golf, and they don't even know who the golf pros are. So at least I'm going to introduce myself to them, maybe even tell them to come out, and I'll give them a free lesson, whatever, get them on the golf course, utilize their facility. The other thing, like I said, when they're not doing anything, I'm either going to have them go home. That's what we've been doing the last actually couple weeks now. When they're just standing around, you can see even my full-time staff, they're not working their full 8-hour shifts. They're going home early. So I'm looking at what I currently have, and then I'm maximizing their efficiency. And if I don't need them, let them go. But I'm not going to eliminate the service. you know, because we still need the service. You know, our first foremost thing is what your amenities you have, and then your service, right? So if I can eliminate where I can, if I can save money on our expenses and then make the most on our revenues, then we're doing a good thing. So I did get our budget. It was already done. So I am going to be looking at what we can do better with our vendors to see if I can cut expenses for 2025. So you should see we're going to be doing better than expenses this year and better than expenses next year as well. So 2024 and 2025. Labor, I will see where we can go with that, but I'm usually pretty good at saving labor money. So that's usually what I have for this one, at least. If you have any questions for me, I can answer everything.
Any other questions for these gentlemen? Okay, thank you very much. Let's move forward with the presentation. I think we are now on to maintenance. Mark Schleiden is not able to come in today, so I will be taking on the questions for the next slides. In the maintenance department, year-over-year change is about $128,636, a 12.21% increase. Increases in planned repair expenditures, the water feature, plumbing services, and HVAC. This is one area that we're expecting to see increases, though there is a plan to work with Procurement Advisory Committee on evaluating. We have a couple of members that have technical expertise with HVAC systems and evaluating should they be replaced instead of band-aided. That will be an evaluation that's done. Labor costs increased, and even though the staffing levels remain the same year over year, the cost of labor has increased. And so what does that mean? It means trying to pay minimum wage for a maintenance worker has not worked out, and we have to pay more in order to get people that are qualified to work in maintenance. Looking ahead, a collaboration with the Procurement Advisory to review potential projects in line with the board approval of the spend plan for 2025, as well as the development of the RFP for janitorial services to hit the street. So with that, are there any questions with the maintenance portion of this budget?
I have a couple of questions about maintenance, Chris. I think I know what the answer is, but I'm going to let you clarify. I was just looking at the 2024 budget compared to actual spend for the last 12 months, and then compared to what's carried over into 2025. And for instance, plumbing services and supplies was budgeted at $21,000, and the actual spend is $58,000. Repair and maintenance was budgeted at $52,000, and the spend is $100,000. The electrical, I think, is similar. HVA maintenance was budgeted at $16,000. The actual spend is $32,000. Electrical is budgeted at $18,000, and the actual spend is $47,000. So the budget for 25 in many cases is just a carryover of the 24 budget, but there was a sense we may not be reflecting the actual spend. And so the FAC actually recommended an increase in the overall maintenance budget, unless what the situation is the expenses that are still there as we approach the end of the year are things that need to be moved over to reserves.
And that's,
so wasn't sure if there was a controls measure we need to put in place then to regularly review the repair and maintenance spend in these areas. I know a lot of it is outside contractors, or if we're just getting behind, because it's been this way month after month after month, we're just behind in the process of moving things into reserves. And so you force the spend by the end of the year to look like the budget too, because you've moved things into reserves. So that was my only question in this area.
And I talked about that with the FAC about the process of making sure staff is trained to process and differentiate between a reserve expenditure or a regular expenditure. And the budgets that's reflected before you for 2025 takes into account that there will be incidental items to work on, but a large majority of items that Mark works with are reserve eligible, meaning they've extended the life, they have a life of more than 1 year. Those will be reserve eligible. So part of it is an internal item, making sure that staff is trained to properly fill out the right forms for a reserve. The other part is that Mark's budget that is before you has increases in certain areas, but a large majority, as we just talked with HVAC, that is a consideration procurement's taking on, is looking at to say, should we be really looking at full replacement of all the units and get a bulk savings from buying multiple units at once, rather than the continuation of band-aiding that we have been doing for the last 2 years? And that's an evaluation along with the air balance study within the main clubhouse, to evaluate are the units that we're using in the locations the most efficient and effective, with a front door that stays open for 30 minutes and lets in hot air or cold air, depending. And also evaluating the boiler that is in the main clubhouse as a repair and replacement item to replace rather than, again, band-aiding. So what Mark has put before you in his item is items that he think will be incidental, that don't really reflect or are not qualified to move to repair replacement, and that's what he's presented to you. If there are no further questions, I'm going to go on to the next phase of maintenance, which is going to be the property protection. And so here, year over year, we're looking at a $148,000 roughly increase, 12.99%. So what changed? Projected increase from community patrol vendor will cause an increase in the 2025 budget. So what is that? Well, that is labor. They are labor heavy, period. That's the service that the association buys, and those costs are going up, and that will be reflected in this budget. The service level is expected to remain the same, except for a few, and this is unfortunate, but we've had to increase Friday and Saturday nights patrol within the main clubhouse during events to maintain some order. We're also looking ahead, working with them on incorporation of technology. I know that is an item that was originally proposed under the procurement advisory, TAI, to look at. They didn't want to join the budget meeting. Okay. Incorporate technology. Where can we incorporate additional access controls, cameras to reduce labor? That's an initiative that was under procurement and technology advisory initiative. I think we also need to look at that as well, because this will be a continuing trend, especially here in California, labor costs going up. How can that be offset or reduced with the introduction of technology? Even the simple technology of you go to a gate that's unmanned, you press a button and someone's picture appears and they're talking to you over the intercom. Those actually save money, because then you're not putting a manned person out there 24/7. These are the things that have to be evaluated. I know that was a TAI initiative. So with that, what are some of the questions that the committees may have regarding property protection? Yes, ma'am.
Regarding the community patrol, there appears to be an increase for Securitas. Did you increase the hours or add more patrol, or is this the normal pricing increase for the same level of service? If no service increase, why did the board not add more service?
So there is no extra service. It is the normal pricing, and there's a small amount for what I call bouncer service, which is somebody coming in on Friday and Saturday night for events to act quasi-bouncer to assist staff if members get disorderly, to escort them out. So there's a small increase on that, but there's no major service enhancement. And I know in version 3, Jason's going to show, I had said there was an increase. In version 2, there was an increase in service level, and that was removed after discussion with the board.
So what was removed was the overnight, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, an additional overnight.
So we're not doing that?
We're not, that's not reflected in version 3.
Okay.
I thought I had it, and I don't. I'm so sorry. The proposed budget is a 13% increase over what we've currently spent to date. Is that, then that's totally a contract increase? That's what Securitas is proposing, a 13% increase?
No, there's
All right.
two aspects, as I said. There's a piece of it that is the normal contract increase, and there are some additional hours. When you look at 4 hours, so it's 8 hours extra service per week. That's on a Friday and Saturday. That's the bouncer service that they'll provide, and that's 8 hours multiply out for the year. That's included in this dollar amount too. So there's the only service segment that's increasing is additional service for patrol in the main clubhouse. No additional vehicle patrols.
And what is the base contract rate increase then?
Usually it's about 4 to 6. The board will have to, that will be coming up for the board to negotiate shortly.
Okay, 4 to 6%. Thank you, Chris.
Chris, didn't you say that the main driver for that was wages?
Yes.
Okay.
And so not only is it that 4 to 6, it's the wage, but also their fees, just like First Service that has benefit fees, et cetera, that is going. So they're projected is a 4 to 6. That will be coming before you probably at the November meeting for discussion with Securitas. I know they're preparing to make their estimate at that time. We have been conservative in this number, but also that extra service dollar amount for the additional patrol within this building on Friday and Saturday nights.
Hey, Chris.
Yes, yes.
Can we save some money by using cameras?
That's what the TAI initiative is going to be, if it moves forward, was going to look at additional cameras and access controls. I think access control is an investment. It's the initial investment, but having the ability that all the doors at 10 o'clock automatically lock, I don't have to then send patrol out to look at that. Patrol can be looking at other things. If you say, you know what, we're comfortable with a video screen, person talks to the person somewhere else in the world, that can then assist them showing the driver's license. There are a lot of options with technology beyond cameras that we need to look at. But for the patrol in here, a camera only helps after the incident occurs, and we're trying to be proactive to not only protect staff, but we've had some instances, unfortunately, of members getting disrespectful to other members. Let's just say that. And that can't be tolerated. And so that's why that patrol is here. We might get that little robot that goes around that night service or whatever. We might have to get that. They can serve drinks as well, too. Bill, you got a good voice. You don't need a microphone. Okay.
Just one comment. Having been on the safety committee for many years, I want you to think about, I don't believe that not having an extra guy on the patrol on the weekend is going to be sufficient. We've had 2 break-in thefts at your maintenance shop and robbed a lot of equipment. And with the increased amount of visitors that we're getting to California and around, I think you're going to need an extra patrolman on weekends. That's when we seemed to have a lot of problems before, and I'm worried about it in the future here. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah.
Any other questions on community patrol? Okay, I'm going to move on next to, I believe it's landscape. Okay, so this is the common area, not Mark Birchfield's area, but the common area that's not golf course. The projected increase year over year is about 138,000 roughly, an 8.07 increase year over year. Projected increase in landscape contract in June 2025. Expected increase in landscape extras. Now this is the extra work that is outside the normal what's in the contract. Additional services if cleaning up items in the street, for example. Whatever is extra beyond the contract gets coded to that, and we've seen an increase in that expense line in 2024, and we're expecting it into 2025. The Greenbelt allocation will increase as we're seeing an increase in golf maintenance items. 35% of it goes over to Mark Schleiden's budget and is reflected as a Greenbelt allocation. So we're seeing that increase in his department. And looking ahead, the operation director will continue to monitor his areas of opportunities to improve. Is there ways to improve the maintenance schedule? What else can be done with, with it being dry, the weeds? What can we do to be more effective on that? Those are some of the areas that he will be looking at, along with his contractors, making sure that they stay on. He's been very good in the past about arm twisting them to make sure that they perform or limit their increases year over year. That's happened in the past. Going forward, though, again, in California and other things going on with costs, it's going to be harder to, year over year increases from vendors are harder to negotiate that downward as they have their costs increasing. So with that, are there any questions regarding the landscape portion of maintenance?
Chris, I just have a question on the landscaped extras. Thank you for the explanation of what that is. The spend over the last 12 months has been $23,000, and it looks like you're looking for that number to nearly triple. And I can see if there's an increase, maybe a 25% increase, but...
So if you look at page 3, actually through 8 months, it's $37,557. Annualize that out, you're going to get at the 8 months the $56,000. So we're projecting coming in at 56. If everything goes well, maybe it will be less. But based on the amount that Mark has utilized, we're looking to increase to that $62,258. And one of the things that also we're working, we talked about, you brought up classifying expenses correctly. One of the problems that has happened in the past is if it's coming from artistic, it automatically gets charged to their base contract. And that should not happen. The extra work that is outside the contract needs to be coded under landscape extra. And what that does is that allows management then to look at it and evaluate, boy, these are extras. When we renegotiate the next contract, we need to include those extras into the base at a lower price. That will help. But in the past, there's been some miscoding. I personally went through this line by line and pulled the expenses and talked to Schleiden and said, you guys got to code it to the right account because it doesn't reflect. So when you picked it up and look at, well, that's a 23. It's actually through August, 37,557. So that
Okay, because what we see in the 12 months is there's sometimes charges in some months and some months without, which makes sense based on what you're describing. It's run anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 to $6,000. But then in August, it was $21,000. And this was $24,000, sorry, $19,000 and $23,000, $28,000 and this year. So it's like the entire year of cost hit in August. And I think Mary Jo had found some journal entry that we may wanted to have investigated. So.
I was the one who generated it. I did an internal audit of this account. And that's where I found that the reason there's an entry of $21,242 is going through, this is just what I just said, I went through the expenses to identify because contract work was higher and based on what we were working with, that shouldn't have been over budget. And when we evaluated it and looked where other staff had coded it, they were coding incorrectly. So again, going back, coaching staff up, make sure, hey, if it's this, code it
Okay.
here. So yes, it looks, if you look at it, it looks, holy smoke, August was a horrible month, what did you do? But that, unfortunately, there was an entry for all of the year of reclassifying
Oh.
expenses.
Okay.
That's why that 37,000 year-to-date, I'm pretty comfortable with because I've gone through it myself. And projecting where he's going with the extra work, again, I'll use Tom's comment of service and trying, Mark is very, and if you know Mark, he's prideful about the work and wants to make this community look very good. And heavy windstorm or there's a mud spill, what happened on Breckenridge one time, Schleiden doesn't have millions of people to come out and start shoveling. He'll use artistic, and that will be an extra service to keep the community looking good as a whole. So we do see that increase. And then again, what I'd like to do working with Schleiden is, are there items within that landscape extra that can be negotiated into the base contract as something that they do automatically and don't charge extra? That's a strategy we'll take going forward. Yep. Any other questions before we move on to the next one? Okay, moving on. Let's go to recreation. Actually, Jason, this will be yours. So year over year change, 61,592, about 10% increase year over year. Labor costs were the largest driver for this department that increased in 2025. An additional staff member that was added per board approval this year will carry over into next year. That's why there's a change in staffing. Pool monitors returned in 2023. Funds have been allocated to fund the continued use of pool monitors. So along with a staff member that's been added to help with, and Jason will go over tear downs, setups, all that, additional monitors because we've had issues at the pool. We've had issues with glass coming in, and so that expense is remaining in there as we might need additional assistance during the summer. The recreation activity budget decreased year over year. 2024, unfortunately, that budget that was built, prior recreation director, a very aggressive budget for 2024, including having a nail salon, beauty salon. That didn't come to fruition, and a lot of the events that were planned by recreation back in 2023 for 2024 didn't happen because there is room usage issues. And what I mean is, this room is dedicated to Sun Lakes and to make sure that the clubs and groups have time and have their allocated time used. What that does is that eliminates the possibility for an association doing an extra concert or an extra comedy act that could generate revenue because it's already being used. And Jason and I hope we'll talk about that. And so where the budget for 2024 was aggressive that those days will show up, unfortunately that didn't come to pass. And so Jason and Linda have ratcheted that down. You saw that on the revenue side, excuse me, for activities and then expenses related to that. So looking forward, not for 2025, but actually into 2026 because room rental, room reservation is done a year in advance. If the board says, yes, we would like to expand more items, more comedy shows, more concerts, they generate more revenue for the restaurant, and they give our members something different for their entertainment, then let's look to add more days, but we'd have to do that in 2026, and that would be a 2026 budget item. For 2025, it's more, I think, realistic. So Jason, with that, you, like Bill, don't need a microphone, but please use the microphone.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chris. That's a good point. You know, with the facility, with the pool monitor, you may look on there and said, yeah, Chris, you said you have an increased personnel to help out there. Well, why do you still have, a pool monitor expense? Well, during the summer, that additional part-time monitor that the board did approve During the summertime, it'll be coded to pool monitors. That's what his main function will be. And then once the pools close, he will be coded to our normal salaries. So that's why you still see a pool monitor expense, even though that pool monitor is really a monitor now. Chris is absolutely correct with, we have 4 dates. I got 4 dates in the ballroom next year. That's it. 4 dates to have a concert or something. We have almost 100 clubs here that use those. Recreation has always been the filler. We are the support of the clubs and groups here. So with the exception of the classes, we wait until all clubs and groups and districts input all their weekends and all the things that they want, all their events, and then rec comes in and says, okay, where do we need to fill in? Over the years, it has gotten less and less. 10 years ago, clubs were less active than they are right now. Actually, believe it or not, they are. There's more and more going on every day here. So those dates that I have been allowed in the ballroom have been cut over the years. Moving on down, uniforms. Monitors, traditionally in the past, we just had a shirt or whatnot. Some people have said, you know what, they need more of a uniform so we can see them and stand out more. So now they all have the same uniform. Unfortunately, that comes at a cost. That's why you'll see the increase in the uniform budget. Something that we've never had before compared to now having an actual uniform for the monitors.
And I want to note, that's important that we have to differentiate our staff, because there have been instances where members have followed one of the recreation staff thinking they were an underage person utilizing the facility. So they had to have uniforms. Sun Lakes, same with Mark Schleiden's operations teams. They've got to have uniforms that say, hey, I should be here. I work for the association. Please don't turn me into patrol. So that's, there you go, sorry.
That's all good. Thank you, Chris. Again, internet services, that has gone up. Not only in just the cost of internet, but we've also upgraded a lot in this clubhouse with all the users that we have now. Everybody's using phones. Back, what I said, 10 years ago, where I can get away with just a 1x1 in here and allow you guys to sign in just to look at a text message or something. It's different now. You guys are wanting to come in here. You guys are wanting to stream. You guys are wanting to look at things on your phone. You can't do that with a 1x1. You need to up and increase that. So we've done that. I see Ken over there with a thumbs up. That's something that has cost more, but it's a service to you residents. So that's why you'll see that increase there. Moving on, committee expenses. That did increase. That's more, what committee expenses, you're like, what is committee expenses? Well, $2,300 of that right off the bat is the $100 gift cards that each district is given at the beginning of the year for their events that they have throughout the year to give out to their residents at parties. So right there, that's a big part of it. The rest of it is the name badges and any little incidentals that we have for the committees. A lot of times the board, committee will ask the board, food and beverage, ask the board, hey board, can you approve us for Monday night football gift certificates? That's where that gets coded, committee expenses. So that's why that increases there. That's kind of running through the line items there. I'll open any questions that any of you guys have regarding the recreation budget. Yes, ma'am.
I just have one question, Jason, about the internet services. So again, looking at the spend over the last 12 months, even just the last kind of 6 months, it's in the $400 to $700 range per month. And you're budgeting $1,600 a month, which seems like a lot, because the actual spend for the last 12 months has been less than $5,000.
Right.
So what is the monthly? Is it $1,600?
Yeah, it is increasing, you guys. You got to think
is it
everything that's going
$1,600?
pretty close to it, yes. Everything that's in the lounge that we have upgraded and added an entire AV system in there, the software to go along with it that requires more internet, the Sirius XM that's going in there, all that is coming out of that. That's why there's been such an increase, because we have increased so much that you will see onboarding coming this year. All your TVs in the sandwich, all that, the NFL Sunday ticket, all that, that's where that's coded to. So that's why you see such a big increase, because we have added all these services. Well, yeah. Correct. Yes, like you said, higher speeds that we will be getting in here to accommodate all that. The internet that we have dedicated just to the POS system, that still all comes out of internet services. So again, that's why you have the increase. Right. Well, yeah, it's kind of it's kind of the catch-all. Internet services for recreation, including everything in all the clubhouses, because recreation essentially entails the clubhouses. Yeah.
Yeah, so that it's a service, what reason it's coded to recreation, and why you'll see it next year. Again, that's what the community has asked, and he pointed out Ken. Ken has been big. He gets angry when he cannot download his football bets timely, and we want to, and I'm just kidding. But seriously, we're going to have to pay for a bigger pipe, if I use just that analogy, to better speed. So that's included in here. The reason it's in recreation is they handle all clubhouses, any of that. So they are responsible. They then have to make sure the account. Okay.
Chris, that's a great point. Additionally, what we've had added this year, for those of you that have used the North and South, the TV's in there. The internet, that's all connected to the internet. All that goes into that same service. So that's just stuff that wasn't budgeted for in 2023 coming into 2024, but now we need to look at moving forward.
Thank you. Do appreciate the coverage in the clubhouses.
Any other? All right. I got off easy.
Enough mic time. Enough mic time for him. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide, Jay. That is going to be, let me see where we're at. Planning and compliance at Tanisla. Year over year, labor costs were the largest driver for this department expense in 2025. No additional staff was added, but the cost of it, the benefits, increased year over year. About $17,194, 5.83% increase. And with that, Ed Tanisla is here to answer any questions.
First off, please allow me to give my thanks to the Board of Directors and to the community for permitting my department to replace the outdated and struggling Chevy Sparks with 2 new Chevy Trax. So my thanks also to the dealership who realized the rock and hard place the association was in when they found they were unable to provide the vehicles we had budgeted for. They gave us an upgrade out of the graciousness of their hearts. So my staff much appreciates air conditioning. The vehicles are budgeted to last us at least 8 years, so please don't use it for golf ball target practice. And don't throw eggs. It's a good paint scheme on them, and I want to keep it that way. Joking aside, what you will see in the budget for my department is a reduction in vehicle costs because of those purchases. What we were facing with the Sparks was a minimum $8,000 battery replacement for each vehicle, and that's just for parts, not including labor. So now we can roll in the monies that we had set aside for vehicle maintenance and release that back to the general operating fund. As far as supplies go, one of the initiatives that my department started several years ago of printing certain things in-house continues to pay off, which is why you are not asked to give $20.50 per paint pamphlet and we can give it away with the applications. Other things like the yellow cards being printed in-house on demand, the applications on demand. This way we keep the paper costs down, which is quite brutal when you sit down and you do the numbers. I'm going to speak a little off topic, so if Chris gently educates me, don't worry about it. It is the endeavor of my department that our yearly revenue from fines is 0. I want to nip that rumor in the bud. We do not have a fine quota. Ideally, the amount of revenue from fines is 0 because my department's goal is compliance. We want you residents to enjoy your community within the bounds of the governing documents, and sometimes that means having an extended conversation with some folks. But no, it's whatever fines we gather, it does not go to my department. It does not come to me. It goes to the association for use by the association. Otherwise, I really have no big numbers to tell you. We are staying stable with staff. We will make do with what we have. And it's a beautiful day here. What questions do you have for me?
I just have one question. Workload-wise, are you caught up or are you behind? I know during the pandemic, things got sort of behind. Workload-wise, do you feel like, we're giving service to the community in the sense of applications or whatever you provide to the community? Are we caught up?
My answer is going to be that's a complicated answer. And the reason being, certain big projects like the paint audit, where all 2,877 single-family homes, I laid eyes on those records and compared notes and sent notices as appropriate. That phase is done. But now comes the follow-up. We still have homeowners who feel that the pandemic gave them 5 extra years to paint their home. Surely they can wait another 5. And their neighbors are saying something completely opposite. The workload has increased, continues to increase. Unfortunately, not all residents of Sun Lakes are neighborly. And that percentage is increasing, and as a result, our workload is increasing for that. If this is a subtle way to ask me, would I appreciate having one more person on staff? Why, yes, I would. Thank you for asking. It's my endeavor to avoid overtime for my department. Some overtime, it happens, when you have 185 items on the agenda for the architectural committee, someone's going to be staying late. Is it something that I anticipate on a regular basis? No, and I would like to avoid that.
Thank you. I appreciate what you do.
No, we will not be giving guided tours with the tracks, no, even though they still have their new car smell, no.
Stanislaw, my only concern is several of the people in my district, the only complaint I hear, and I wouldn't let it bother me, I'd go on 5 or 6 extensions, but they don't get a call back when they call somebody at one of those extensions listed in the lifestyle for your individual people.
We have, I'll admit right now, I am the hardest person to get hold of by phone, flat out. If you're able to catch me on the phone, you owe yourself a scoop of ice cream, a lottery ticket, and your favorite adult beverage to keep your good luck going. Because I may be in my office, but I'm often with someone. Or I have stolen a golf cart from the pro shop, and if you see a wide white brim hat, that's me. I'm headed out to take care of some business. But we do have a department phone number, and that is in Lifestyles. But what we do not have is a way to preempt what a call and hang up is for. So if you do call your constituents, your neighbors, a vendor, a real estate agent, if you do call the planning compliance phone number or you call one of the extensions for my department and you leave a message of, just call me. I don't always have your caller ID. I don't always have your phone number. Just call me. Or I called all 4 extensions and nobody answered and they just need to know to call me back. That's a very common blowback. I called the main clubhouse and they didn't have an answer to my question. Did you call planning compliance? Did you let us know? Did you leave a message? My name is Jane Doe. I'm at 123 Any Street, and I have a question about parking. I have a question about guest limits. I have a question about my neighbor who is flying a purple flag in the morning, and I disagree with it. We're not mind readers, and this is a blessing because you don't want to be up in here. There's a lot of sharps. But right now, as far as workload, we have a lot of folks who do call in, but they don't tell us why. And I'm about to get gently educated again, I'm sure. Some of you who have come to my office has probably seen the 5-minute hourglass on my desk. That's not decoration. I have enforced it. In the before times, before the pandemic, staff had more time to be sociable with folks. We don't have that luxury now. So if you come to my office, and you actually get to catch me, and we finish discussing the matter of the association, and you pivot to, how was your weekend? I'm sorry, I need to get back to my work. We don't have the time. And this does pivot to my complicated answer to Gary's question, how is the workload? Right now, we're treading water. But to do so, we have to be rude about it. We don't have time for social interaction. We need to focus on keeping the association as a whole. Now, for those folks who would still like to hear back from us, hi, my name is John Doe. I'm at 123 Any Street. Please call me about X. We have a lot of spinning plates, and if I answer one question, it's going to lead to 20 more. Letting us know what your request is helps us to find your answer and call you back with the answer up front, rather than playing phone tag or, well, I know I wanted to call about my parking, but I really don't like the plants that are on the golf course. My department can't answer about the golf course. We can't answer about what brand of pepper they use in the kitchen. Yes, that has been a request. We can't answer about why we use the transponder strips. That's not my department. And I get on a lot of folks' nerves when I say, I don't know, I don't have an answer, I don't know who to point you to. So if you do call us, or if you call the main clubhouse, or you call the front desk of the administration office, I need to speak to someone about X, and they will point you to the right person. Because what I'm finding out the hard way going through our messages is maybe a third of the folks that's leaving a message for us actually has a question for planning compliance. So now that I've cried on your shoulder, any other questions for me? I can tell you about some of our initiatives that we've been working with the Mass Architectural Committee going forward, streamlining the applications. Right now, of our 5 application categories, 4 of them are 2 sheets of paper. We're going to streamline that into 1. We are looking into more online submissions and responses. However, Davis Sterling does require a letter in the mail for certain responses, and we will be keeping with that. And I have nothing else to pick on you folks about, unless Chris.
I'd like to add just one thing, just very quickly, for everybody to know. As was noted, the phone system is actually not totally antiquated, as bad as I thought it was, but we are currently analyzing the phone system that will offer a lot more options for the people that calling in, for the recipients, and that hopefully will help streamline and get you above water rather than just treading.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next one, Jason. And David, you're free to go. I know you're watching. You're free to go. You don't have to sit around. Moving on to, I think it's bulk cable, or I'm sorry. Administration, it is. I apologize. Okay. Year over year, $309,000 roughly change, 11.9% year over year percentage change. So what are some of the details? Those are collection costs increased. As we have seen, and I have stated, delinquencies are going up. Insurance costs are expected to increase throughout the industry. This is what's going on throughout HOAs as well. Labor costs increase about 12.47, There's an additional staff member that would be hired to replace the staff member that we laid off during COVID. The other is just increases to benefits and the 3%. Increase in printing and supplies expected. And we are increasing computer support. The biggest part is as we move more to technology, tablets, equipment, we no longer have the on-site staff that can say, sure, let me take away from my job and go help with IT functions. And as we're moving more to technology, there is a need to include a dedicated IT person. So that will, association has a third-party IT company that assists, and we are looking that their workload will increase in this new year. And looking ahead, monitoring delinquencies will be a high priority for administrative because that is a concern we're seeing. With that, are there any questions on administration?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I thought at our last executive, we had agreed upon no additional new staff for admin.
We had talked about it. I think that's going to be a recommendation. The board's going to ask that be removed.
So the additional staff is factored into this.
Right, so that would be roughly an $80,000 fully loaded change.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for admin?
I don't know if this is the appropriate spot. I've been waiting until we got through most all of the departments, but has there ever been any real serious look at staffing service levels throughout the entire operation? In other words, the quality of service and the adequacy of certain number of staff, what would happen if it increased, and any of that kind of analysis? Is that part of the budget process on an annual basis?
That is part of the process, and so one of the areas, when I first got here, there were four plus, there were actually 5 customer service related IT qualified assistants. We lost that IT qualified person in 2019. When we went through the pandemic, we eliminated a position, laid off the person, to now where we only have 3 front desk, reception, and 2 customer service people that can assist you with new homeowner orientation, RFID stickers, setting up your tenants. And the evaluation of service has been hindered. We have now, and I can understand the members' displeasure in this, but we have moved to now a appointment-based system, and it can take 2 weeks for you to get your appointment in. I feel like the DMV, unfortunately, but to get in to do an RFID sticker. And a member may say, hey, come on, just go out there, put the sticker on my headlight and call it a day. The problem is you have many members that are trying to do that. You have also members walking in with emergencies, calls coming in. So, no, I don't think we have adequate staff to meet the customer service expectation of the community.
You know, in that regard, I think it would be beneficial if information like that were presented to the community, because this issue of everybody wants to keep the budget, the annual dues, as low as possible has offsets to it, especially in an economic environment that we've been dealing with. And so maybe the community might be more understanding about why things are the way they are and have them understand better the consequences. Are there any plans to do something of that nature? That's probably more a question for the board than it is for you. But
I look at the board too. I think at this time it's I think the direction
I'm not
that
sure how best to answer that. I mean, I understand the concern and the idea that we could better communicate, and I agree with you. There is pressure, though, to keep our increase in the HOA reasonable. And you know, maybe, I don't want to shortcut because I know Chris has a couple other areas to cover. But, you know, the other factor is, for example, through August of 2024, we have a fairly large deficit. And as I go on ad nauseum, our cash position in the operating fund needs improvement. And that doesn't get improved when we end up with losses. And I asked, you know, just for example, I've asked First Service, and they've provided a projection for the remainder of the year, cash flow wise. That projection shows at the end of October, we'll have $498 in the bank. So that's an unacceptable amount to me. And maybe I'm getting off track, but in addition to the budgets for all these areas, I think we have to look at what the loss that we have so far and going projected for 2024, how that gets recovered. We can't have a deficit and then not recover it. So anyway, that's another discussion. But I mean, I understand the service level, and we need to communicate better about it. But and I also agree that probably prior years our HOA should have gone up more, but we're at where we're at. So anyway, I'll let Chris go on with that. But I would like, in the end, for him to address what the projected loss for 2024, if we are going to have one, and how that would be recovered, and what can be done to improve our cash position.
Before Chris answers that, I'd like to just say, Bob, I agree with what you're saying. And the last part, what Gary said, of course, makes absolute sense as well. And I mean, all of it made sense. No disrespect was intended there. And, but that last point, we're dealing with economic differences, huge economic differences that my history and my research has not shown that this community has had until the last 5 or 6 years. And the economic issues that are happening in our country are a big factor, and you're right. Some people understand a $25 increase. Other people don't. I'll just leave it at that. So it's just something to think about. So,
are there any other questions on the admin side? So one of the things that Gary was talking about, we did present a cash recovery plan to the board of directors, and that basically is looking at, I'm trying to find out right here. Let's see. And on that, the recovery plan, to kind of look back at the past, what I try to do when I write these reports for the board is to give context of what has happened in the past and how some of the decisions that occurred in the past continue to reflect in the future. And so one of the areas that we're going to have to look at as we go forward are cutting back. I think you've heard several of the directors already talk about Eric cutting back on staff. I know, Tom, your point is well taken about customer service. From a management perspective, we're trying to balance that and costs at the same time. Some of the other items that we'll have to look at is cutting back in other areas as we come into the new year or at the end of the year, making sure people take their vacations. That is one thing that has caused a large increase in the last 2 months, are the amount of accrued vacation time, which is great. You've earned that vacation, but you're not taking it because you can't, because you need to work. Now we're entering into a slower period of the year, and that is when we see the majority of vacations take place, not only in golf course maintenance, but in other departments. And so you see that reverse itself in the timeline of November and December. On that, and that was referenced in page 4 and 5 of the operating cash recovery. One of the variables is utilities, and with the weather, what is going to happen? Does it continue? Are we going to get cooler? They say we're going to get cooler temperatures, but I'm already into October, and that means great. I'll get cooler temperatures probably in November and December. That hurts that budget line item. And then it's asking all the directors to tighten up through year end, making sure, number one, overtime is eliminated. Part-time staff hours, you heard David talk about, hey, what we're doing is if there's not a lot of activities, I'm sending my staff home. Those are areas through proactive management you can look and say, hey, I'm going to save my budget by taking these actions. And another thing, and I think Eric talked about it, are meal and break violations. We are required, if that person does not take their break, there's penalties that go with that. So it's staying on top of front of the house, back of the house, take your break. Somebody needs to cover for that person that takes a break. That has to be done. Those will be ways to save on costs. If we can't meet that, or there ends up being a true loss at the end of the year, that will be burdened into the next year. We'll start out, unfortunately, the year behind the curve unless the board does special assessment, borrowing from the repair and replacement fund. But I want to see how these next couple of months turn out because I know that there will be a reversal on the vacation and the labor hours that will decline into November and December. It historically has happened that way. And I think you'll get to see how the savings have done through the next couple of months by the directors. Utilities just going to be the wild card right now. Okay, I'm going to move on to...
Excuse me, Chris.
Oh, yeah.
In regard to the operating cash recovery plan that you mentioned, one thing that we didn't see, and I agree, you put a lot of reasoning into the reasons why we were short on cash and continue to be short on cash. But what I haven't seen in that operating plan is a monthly plan on recovering that operating cash. I would actually like to see an operating recovery plan actually as a line item in this budget. It's something that we've spoken about for months, and the operating cash has deteriorated as the year has gone on. I think residents would like to see how management plans on recovering that cash back up to 1 month's worth of expenses. And I see no reason why it shouldn't be a line item in the budget. I request that it be added to the budget and supported with the operating cash recovery plan modification that you've already submitted. I think residents would also like to see your plan for recovering the operating cash to 1 month's worth of bills. Thank you.
I want to address this to Gary or perhaps Bob. The FAC in their analysis has a bit of a challenge to, I would say probably 60% of the line items in this administrative category for a total of a proposed cost reduction over $300,000, but it's 1230. So, excuse me, rather than go through these, Gary, you have a copy of them and it could potentially be discussed with the board. I don't want to start, I don't think, going through these. Is that enough?
Yes, but we're very interested in reviewing those.
Yeah, I mean, again, we agree with what Don just said, you know, and in fact, in the 2024 budget, we had about $3 a month that was supposed to be used to increase our cash position. Unfortunately, you know, that would have essentially created a surplus. But what Sandra is suggesting is that the FAC has put together some analysis I think as a board, need to look at that. It helps, or it basically cuts some of the cost in the different departments that I think need to be seriously considered by this board, because as much as I'm trying to balance the fact that the HOA hasn't been increased in prior years as much as it might should have been, I don't want to, from my position, I don't want to increase it $27 for 2025. So everything that Chris and management has presented makes sense, but in the end, I believe we have to live within our means, and this board has to decide, how much they want to raise the dues for the membership.
If I can just go back to what Sandra was saying. Excuse me, I think you're contagious. I'm getting it now. Definitely this board would like to see the information that you've put together, but I respect you and I thank you for realizing that you can hear my stomach growling all the way over there. It's already 12:30, so we can take that because Gary has a copy, and the board will definitely look at it. So thank you for your consideration. I appreciate that.
Did you email that to the board, or?
I think Gary has a copy.
Okay.
Yes, and Gary, I had what I'll call a formatting change, and so I will email that to you. And so thank you, I appreciate that. We did put a lot of thought and work into it, and I'm grateful for the chance to participate, but you saw I had to step out, so appreciating the time.
Yes, we want to thank you for all the effort and time that has been put in there by you and your committees. When you realize each $40,000 in savings is $1 off of the monthly fee. So if we can come up with $400,000 in savings, and you're recommending even more than that, it's going to reduce that by $10 a month, which is going to make this a more realistic increase for our membership. So I'm very interested in reviewing that.
And it really is a balance here when we start looking at trying to reduce costs, because all of us want to have a reasonable amount that we put out there. But all of us, and I'm hearing this all day today, also want the amenities. We also want the service. We also want what we bought in here for. And it's our responsibility to find that balance. So trying to cut is going to end up with what we're hearing now. I can never get anybody to wait on me in the restaurant. I never get this, I never get that, I can't find this. Well, that's a balance. That's going to happen if we cut staff. So we just have to be realistic, and I like what you said, Bob, about letting people hear what's expected, letting us hear what's expected, but sharing with people that you have to make an appointment now because we've had to cut staff. We don't have. Maybe that isn't what everybody wants here. I know there's a lot of people here who, and we've heard this before, we've got a minority of people here who really are on a very, very strongly fixed income. And they're the ones who've been here for a while, and they are getting Social Security. Woo-hoo. And that's it. So I completely understand that side of the coin. And if you raise your fees $30 every single year, you're going to eventually price them out. And I get that. Flip side, you've got a lot of people here who don't have those challenges, and they bought here because it's a country club. They bought here because we have these beautiful golf courses. They bought here. Marketing has been giving out these cards to new homeowners asking about what was important to them. Over half have said that a restaurant on property is important. This is why they came here. This is why we're coming here. So we have to balance that. And that's tough, believe me, for us to do, which is why we do these kinds of things, which is why it's so helpful to hear from all of you about your input and your thoughts and your ideas. So thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate what FAC has done. I appreciate what PAC has done. And everybody else. But just remember, there's a balance there. And we try the hardest we can. You know, if we didn't have to raise it, wouldn't that be something? Boy, that's La La Land, isn't it? So anyway, we are taking that into consideration, but service is consideration too. Thank you.
I appreciate that everyone is being fiscally responsible, but my biggest question is, are we adequately staffed to meet the needs of the administration? That's also key.
You know, that's an interesting question, and I would say a flip side of that is there's a cost to behaving badly. And I think the most horrifying thing I've heard today is that Securitas needs to provide a bouncer in the main clubhouse on Friday and Saturday night. And so, you know, we're talking about our amenities and the things that we hope for. So, yeah, they're all things to take into consideration. Hopefully this is observed by many and taken to heart. Thank you, Beverly, for your comments.
Bob, at this point, I don't know if there are any more questions because we are over the time limit set.
The only thing that I would like to add is that, you know, and these are estimates, you know, your home sales and the reserve replenishment fee amount that we're going to be making in the future. I think the estimates here are way too low. An example is they're factoring in or predicting home sales of 180. If you look back on 2023 actuals, it was 245 sales. You know, so for your special social member fees, we made 232,750, and they're predicting next year we're only going to make 171. So when you factor that in, you come in with a low ball effort, your budget is going to be way out. And it's not only is it impacting the social member fees, but it's also impacting the reserve replenishment fee. They're predicting 415,000, when if you use the 23 numbers, it would be 565,000. So that's a big difference. And when you put in the more accurate numbers, I think that would help us come up with a more realistic and better fee increase, in my opinion. Other than that, go ahead.
I'd just like to say thank you for both committees, those in attendance here, those watching at home, that if you heard something today that you'd like implemented, please send me an email. I'll take a look at it. I'll take it to the board executive session and take it to administration and see what we can do. So we have an open mind on that, or I'll speak for myself only. I'm sure everybody does, but I can only speak for myself. So I'll have an open mind, and nothing's locked in stone at this point, as Bob said at the outset of the meeting. So right now, this is the preliminary, and if you have any comments, please send me an email, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Any other comments from board directors? I would just like to thank everybody for coming and listening today. Again, it's not a finished product. I appreciate all the input, and we're going to do our very best, you know, to balance the needs of the community, you know, with the overall realistic fee increase, and we'll know that at our open session coming up the end of this month, because this is not the final version. Thank you very much.